You're listening to The Alex Jones Show.
Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
We're now into hour number 2. Alex Newman, investigative journalist for the New American Magazine, has really dug into what's in the Unitaire UN Small Arms Treaty. It goes into effect December 24th that Obama says will implement regardless of what Congress does. We're going to look at the executive power grab, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and a lot more coming up, and open the phones up specifically on the UN gun treaty. And then Gerald Celente gives us an exclusive first look at his projections for the major trends of 2015. Gerald Celente, the trends forecaster, in the second hour. Right now, let's go back to some more of this clip from just earlier today with Jonathan Gruber. Let's just start this at the beginning because it's pretty powerful. Doesn't recall his statements. Here it is.
Statements were inexcusable, insulting, but they do appear to be true. You're not here recanting today your statements with respect to the tax aspect of Obamacare, are you?
I'm here today to say that any conjectures I made about political...
This is not a conjecture, Mr. Gruber. I mean, conjecture is, I believe it may have been, someone may have been thinking, perhaps they were, perhaps it was. This is your straight-up statements. These are not conjecture. Is it your purpose today to recant Obamacare as a tax?
It is my purpose today to come forward and elaborate and straighten out the interpretation of a series of comments that I made and to apologize.
Excellent. Let's do that then. Let's clarify it. Mr. Gruber, you made these statements, did you not?
If I don't recall exactly, but...
You don't recall. Now, one of them we actually saw on video. Do you recall that one?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, these statements, we'll enter them for the record, and I can't imagine how you don't recall your own statements because the American voter has seen them over and over again as you've called them stupid. Do you deny making these statements, Mr. Gruber, even though you don't recall them? Do you deny calling Obamacare a tax?
If you're reading my actual quotes, then I don't deny it. I am
reading your actual quotes.
Then I don't deny it.
Okay, so you're not here to recant it or to deny it?
I'm here to explain that a number of those comments were made in a tone of expertise that I don't have when I was talking about political...
Mr. Gruber, do you know what a tax is? I mean, you do have, expertise in economics. Do you know what a tax is?
Yes.
Okay. So you would not deny today that in these statements that you made that Obamacare is a tax, would you?
Obamacare is a large piece of legislation with many parts.
And is one of those parts a tax, Mr. Gruber?
There are some taxes in Obamacare,
Well,
yes.
the president, as you know, argued that Obamacare was not a tax until it went before the U.S. Supreme Court as to whether or not Obamacare was a tax, and then the administration argued that it is a tax in order to be able to save it from being declared unconstitutional. So I would assume that you agree with the U.S. Supreme Court that Obamacare provisions include taxes, right?
The U.S. Supreme Court ruled on a particular provision of Obamacare. About
you do not disagree with them, do you?
I'm sorry?
You don't disagree with them that there are elements of Obamacare that constitute a tax?
I don't agree with their conclusion about the mandate.
Oh, excellent. Interesting. Different than what you said at these hearings. But now I have a question for you that I'd like you to think back. You said, this bill was written in a tortured way to make sure CBO did not score the individual mandate as taxes. Did you ever speak to anyone in the administration who acknowledged that to you, or to explain that to you, or who assigned a problem with you with the construct of that we have to draft this in a torture way so that we make sure CBO did not score the individual mandate as taxes? And you are under oath, Mr. Gruber. Did anybody in the administration have that conversation with you?
That was an inexcusable term used by...
I'm not asking you about how you believe that, whether or not you should have said that or not. It's a factual statement you're making. Did anybody in the administration ever have that conversation with you?
I do not recall anyone using the word tortured, no.
Did they have the conversation with you that it had to be drafted in a way that the CBO did not score the individual mandate as taxes? Anyone in the administration acknowledge it, explain it, or assign aspects to you within that construct?
I don't.
You are under oath.
I honestly do not recall.
He does not honestly recall bragging everywhere that he helped come up with the fraud. You see there? That's what Edward Bernays, who wrote the book Propaganda, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, who worked for the Department of War and had the name changed to the Department of Defense. He's the reason you eat bacon with eggs in the morning. He's the guy that convinced women that smoking cigarettes would be cool and rebel against their man. He's the guy that has affected our lives probably more than anybody else in modern history. And he talked about mixing politics with Hollywood and the stage back in the 20s and 30s, and they've done that successfully. And then Hollywood can sell the agenda that the family's bad, that strong men are bad, that freedom's bad, that defending yourself is bad. They can sell this anti-human agenda so that we just stand down and become slaves. Now, I wanted to get Alex Newman on because he's an international journalist, educator, author, and consultant. He writes for the New American Magazine and WorldNet Daily. And the website is thenewamerican.com. I've gone over the different permutations of the UN treaty. I remember their small arms treaty they tried to get ratified by the U.S. in 2001. The July 7th copy said, quote, civilian ownership of firearms threatens the legitimate power monopoly of the state. Now, that's a very true statement except for one word, legitimate. Civilian ownership of firearms threatens the power monopoly of the state. That's a true statement. Not civilian ownership of firearms threatens the legitimate power monopoly of the state. Mao Zedong said that political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. And the Chinese historians believe he killed 84 million people. The CIA says it's 66 million. The CIA, and I'd always heard this from the folks at the John Birch Society of the New American and whistleblowers, and they're making some congressional testimony. But it was declassified 15 years ago, and it's even been on History Channel, that the CIA did send rifles with no firing pins or bolts to Chiang Kai-shek and the Nationalists, that they did secretly arm Mao Zedong, and there was even a faction of U.S. government people there from Army intelligence and others that they helped people like John Birch, who they killed, tortured and killed, that's why it's called John Birch Society, roll up and put the communists in charge. And David Rockefeller wrote his famous op-ed when, I think it was 76 or 77, when Mao died, praising what he did. He killed about triple what Hitler did and about double what Stalin did. Greatest mass murderers in history. Mao Zedong, Joe Stalin, V.I. Lenin, Adolf Hitler has 4th place, ladies and gentlemen. 4th place. 4th place. And they praise him. And the guys just found the op-ed piece from the New York Times. Was my history right that it was 76? I forget what year. It was 77. We can put that back on screen, that New York Times. From a China traveler, David Rockefeller. And if you blow it up, it'll say the date. But the point is, David Rockefeller went in before Nixon made his deal with China publicly and set all this up to leverage planetary government between China and the U.S. to bring in this new system. And now with the Trans-Pacific Partnership and with all these treaties, and Obama saying he'll sign and implement treaties outside of Congress ratifying them. Open borders, that's part of the UN Treaty in ESCO. The Trans-Texas Corridor is part of the North American Union integration by stealth plan. All of this is happening, and we see Obama trying to ban the importation of guns and ammo, citing UN policy and previous treaties. So joining us to discuss the attack on the Second Amendment is Alex Newman. Then at the bottom of the hour, specifically, a discussion of the UN. Now, I want to explain something. People always say, get us out of the UN, get rid of the UN. It's the problem. It is the problem. But robber barons in our country, in Europe, and in China, and in the UK created it. The Rockefellers gave the land in New York. They financed it, and more than 100 other globalist organizations to bring in this planetary corporate government where the ultra-rich are above the law. And I've read this quote twice today from Gary Allen, journalist Gary Allen, who wrote None Dare Call a Conspiracy. If one understands that socialism is not a share the wealth program, but is in reality a method to consolidate and control the wealth, then the seeming paradox of super rich men promoting socialism becomes no paradox at all. And his son has joined the dark side and runs and founded Politico. Just like Ron Paul knew, and I guess could call him friends, Alan Greenspan in the 70s, when he wrote books and libertarian books, published like 3 of them that I've read personally, and essays about the Federal Reserve, the New World Order, world government, planetary regime, how gold standard or silver standard was the answer, and they went and hired Alan Greenspan. See, a lot of folks end up deciding to kneel to Emperor Palpatine, to use that allegory. Rise, you will now be known as Darth Vader. Let's go ahead and go to Alex Newman joining us. Alex, I tell you, they are really bold. They're moving fast right now. Let's break down exactly what's in this treaty, because there's a new congressional report out today